visibility via Citrix Web Properties and events. And for Citrix, it's really a big deal to showcase partner solutions complementing our technologies and to create a stronger compute value and to create the stronger product integration story. So in a nutshell, we're very proud to say Citrix Ready Marketplace and the program is the only source for customers like you to evaluate partner verified products and to make your purchasing decision simple and easy. Now, this is the Citrix architecture. As many of you are aware, there are different layers. There's user layer, access layer, hardware layer, control layer, and many more. Now, typically, when we build the infrastructure from ground up, the delivery infrastructure is completed when it is not built properly or when it does not have all the components, right? So in other words, the delivery infrastructure is complicated. So when it is not built properly or when it does not have all the components. So many times we invest time in making the purchase decision for best endpoints, for best cloud solutions, for end computing devices, resources, etc., and many more things. But we either simply hold on or not have a right monitoring solution to monitor infrastructure. Now, honestly, this practice is followed by many enterprises today, and they're paying heavy price for it. One simple example is many times our end users complain what they see in front of them, especially Citrix these days. They wouldn't know what runs, but they don't know what runs behind the endpoints. So they call up help desk saying that Citrix is slow, Citrix is not working, Citrix is taking too long time than usual to log me in, etc., etc. And what would essentially an engineer do? He will log a ticket, he'll start troubleshooting the end user machine, build the files, folders, etc., log off, restart the endpoints, or at times spend too many hours together to understand the actual issue itself. And then they escalate to seniors. I guess we all see this even today. And remind you, just to be on the same page, I'm still not talking about finding the root cause, but I'm still talking about finding the issue itself, where the issue actually, triggering from, and not even worried about how it triggered. So let's understand some of the reasons for the said issue, what it can be. So all the components that you see here coming from different, hardware and software vendors could be an issue. It can also be an issue with larger profile size or logon scripts, the group policy settings, the hypervisor itself, or the VDAs, which is where there is no resources available on the VDA to accept a new connection, or an overloaded Citrix core components, or even the most noticed one is the network slowness connection, right, between the endpoint or the storefront or the endpoint and the VDA, or it can be any other reasons, but not Citrix alone or only, right? So like I mentioned, the issues can be in a database, for example, or in a storage, network, Windows servers themselves. So we all need to understand this and make it very, very clear. And more importantly, this is why we are here today. How do we solve, or what do we need? So we need a monitoring solution that can help give the complete visibility of our IT infrastructure, which can help to prevent the occurrence of an issue in the first place, which can help to debug the issue and fix it as part of an action item, or which can help you find the root cause in minutes. Finally, which can help in improving the end user experience from the time they log on to their application and to allow them to stay ahead of the performance issues before it impacts them. And also to give the IT and end user a peace of mind to work and concentrate on improving the business for the better growth and for the better world. So what do we need? And the answer is Goliath Technologies. I welcome again Kerry from Goliath and Chris, our CDP, who will show us how to turn down the Citrix issues as not a Citrix issue, and in fact help isolate and identify the real issue where it occurs. So in the next 20 to 30 minutes, we will see how Goliath offers turnkey implementation and which helps in monitoring our IT infrastructure, troubleshoot, and report for better experience within few hours of purchasing the solution for your environment. So Kerry and Chris, welcome again. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Manju. You did such a good job laying out the problem. I would probably just jump right into the demo now. No, that was a really great lead in. And our objective for today is simple. We want to show you how to quickly reduce mean time to resolution and quickly identify root cause for session slowness issues. Because when we hear from customers, there's three primary complaints that they have. It's either some sort of logon initiation issue, applications aren't available, or logons are taking too long, or it's some sort of session performance issue, session slowness issue. And as Manju laid out, the issue rarely, actually, what we find rarely lies with Citrix as the root cause. It's some other component of the IT infrastructure. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But before we do that, I'd love to just poll you all and just kind of get an idea of where you're at with this. Are you currently working on troubleshooting session performance issues? Yes, you are, which, a lot of you are here because you're probably looking for ways to solve some of these problems. Maybe the answer is no for session performance, but you are troubleshooting some other user experience issues, maybe logon initiation issues, or maybe logons are taking too long, or some other end user experience issue. Or maybe you're just here because you had an hour in the day, your Citrix environment is running perfect, you have no issues, you just needed something to do. So love to get your thoughts on that and understand a little bit about what you guys are experiencing currently.
Great. So the question is live. You can still vote in the 10 seconds from now. So please vote now. I'm going to close down the poll in 3 seconds. 2, 1. Great. I'm going to show the results on the screen. So Kerry, over 65% say yes.
Yeah. All right. And I mean, that's not a surprise. You wouldn't be on this webinar if you weren't experiencing some sort of issues. So just wanted to validate that, and didn't know if we were just going on a joyride test drive or if we needed to really dig in and hone in on some of your issues. So thank you for validating that for us. So just as a note, and we're going to provide this to you, actually, Zishan is going to put this into the chat for you right now, a link to our most recent report that class featured us in, where you can hear from our customers. And we're not going to spend time talking about this on the session today. I'm just, providing this to you so that you can get some third-party validation. So as you're kind of hearing what we're all about and what Goliath can do, you have the opportunity in concert with that to be able to hear what customers are saying, outside of Goliath saying these things. So I want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. But our customers rated us A+, all the way across the board. And it was a great report done by class. So go ahead and read that when you have a moment, and you'll get some validation from class, a third-party research firm, as well as from our customers as well. So the challenge that most of you all face in your day-to-day is not actually fixing the problems, because usually the issues are fairly easy to resolve. The problem is finding it. So you're spending most of your time actually trying to figure out where the issue is at. And that's one of the things that our customers have told us after they've implemented our technology, is that we actually help them find hard to find but easy to fix issues. And so that's really our wheelhouse. That's our swim lane. So I think you'll see that when we go into the demo here. But just kind of outlining some of the challenges that most of you are facing. Everyone's short on resources, whether it's time, budget, people, tools. You're short on resources. If you're in the healthcare space, you have probably 50% of the resources that your enterprise counterparts who are on this call today have. So everybody's short on resources. Healthcare, you're even more strapped. And then you have challenges finding root cause. That's really the issue here. It's not fixing whatever the issue is, it's finding it. So we are here to help you see how you can quickly identify root cause. And really what that, Manju alluded to this earlier, that with the complexity of the infrastructure, it really puts you guys on the Citrix team, on the Citrix defense team, because everything comes into Citrix. Citrix is blamed for everything. A user stubbed their toe coming into the office and their computer didn't load, it's Citrix's fault. So it really puts you guys on a Citrix defense team. And then add to that, sort of this is what the Citrix expert landscape looks like. There's, with Citrix, there's 400,000 plus organizations that are leveraging Citrix. So big customer base, good job, Citrix. With that, you probably need an average of 3 full-time people monitoring and managing the Citrix environment. Some of you may have three or more, so that's great for you all, but most are short in that area. And that leaves a gap or a requirement of about 1.2 million Citrix pros to fill all those spots. But there's only 60,000 Citrix certified professionals at various certification levels. So that's a massive delta between who out there truly understands the Citrix environment and who you are able to fill or backfill some of your roles in your organizations. And so how do we solve that? We solve that with technology, because that's our only option. Adding to that, the complicated infrastructure, we don't need to rehash this because Manju did a great job going into that. And then you've got your common troubleshooting process, which is, first of all, your primary alerting system are end users. They submit a ticket, now you know there's a problem. So you get this vague ticket, they say Citrix is slow, or Citrix didn't load, don't give you any other information. So now you have to connect with that user to figure out what's going on. You may have to remote into their desktop because they probably don't know how to explain what their issue is anyways, because they're not technical users. They just interface with the few components that they interface with. Then you have to check the health of the machine. Then you're working with other teams, checking the application team, the networking team, the server team. And this now becomes a process of several hours or potentially days. And then you're taking all of this disparate data and you're trying to map it together somehow and come up with some sort of a conclusion and infer what's actually happening with the end users. And we just take a different approach. We start with the end user and we take all of the subjectivity out of it. We take all of the vagueness out of it, and we provide telemetry across the entire Citrix delivery infrastructure. So not just the Citrix components, because you're getting that with Director anyways. So you don't need another monitoring tool to do what Director does. What you need is to see beyond Director. You need to see beyond the Citrix environment that isn't captured there, and you need to see it objectively. And then you need it all correlated in a single place, in a single console, so that it's very easy. You don't have to infer what's going on with the end user. You can see exactly what's happening because you can see which IT elements are impacting other elements and how they ultimately impact that end user's experience. So it takes all of the vagueness and all of the guesswork out of it. This is just one example from one of our customers that we have, and then we'll jump into the demo. But this is a large nonprofit, one of the largest nonprofit health systems actually in the country. And they had a problem, major incident was called. They had a delay in scanning with their EHR. So this involved multiple teams. It was the Citrix team is where it started, the application team, the networking team. Multiple teams are working. No issues were found within their respective teams because, again, IT is working in silos. We're all used to the silos. But the issue was impacting patient care. So doctors, clinicians, they weren't able to access or to be able to scan with their EHR. So what they did was they began to gather end user accounts, PC names, scanner data, very manual process, by the way. And then they were reviewing the EHR scanning applications. They brought the networking team. They had a level 1 networking engineer come in to review it. And then the Citrix team reviewed it and they couldn't find anything. So what they determined was they were going to continue to troubleshoot, but without any data pointing them to the problem, they decided to try to upgrade the scanner drivers on each individual PC as their next steps. And this would have been a massive undertaking. But fast forward, they reach out to Goliath. And so now we've got Goliath deployed. We're automatically checking the Zenap sessions. All of them showed low input line speed and high ICA latency. And so they said, okay, so we figured out here's an issue that we can see. When did this issue start? So now, because we have unlimited historical data retention, they're able to go back to figure out where the point of failure started. So they go back, they figure out, okay, we can see the day where the issue arises. Actually, end users started submitting tickets on that day across various IT support teams for different reasons. And again, patient care has been impacted this entire time. So the data then pointed to a networking change, and then the focus was shifted from updating scanner drivers, which would have been a massive undertaking, to networking. So with this data, they brought in a level 3 network engineer who figured out that the L3 MPLS circuit was dropping packets and it was causing retransmits of data, and then it was slowing down network traffic. And so they went in, they disabled the L3 circuit, and there was an immediate increase in session performance. And this was because they brought in a tool like Goliath. It was Goliath. They brought in a tool that allowed them to see all of the telemetry that impacts the end user's experience and correlate it all in a single place. And that's just one example of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of customer examples that we have. But we're going to jump in and actually show some live demonstration as to how this actually works and how easy it is for you to be able to go in your own environment and isolate root cause for a lot of the common issues that you have. And so we're going to kind of focus on 4 scenarios today. So the scenario is you're getting a Citrix is slow ticket, because that's what happens, right? You get a vague ticket, Citrix is slow, Citrix isn't loading, Citrix is taking too long. Manju listed all of those at the beginning. Now you have to go in and figure out, well, what actually is the issue? Because it may not actually be Citrix at all. In fact, most of the time, it's not Citrix. Again, hence the whole mindset that a lot of our customers have, and probably a lot of you guys have as well, that you're part of the Citrix defense team. Like, you're not solving Citrix problems because there aren't as many problems. You're defending the Citrix delivery infrastructure and the Citrix environment because that's not the root cause of the issues.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, Carrie, that like think by yourself, how often was Citrix for real the problem? How often did you find a root cause that storefront was bugging or the delivery control? And I guess almost it almost doesn't happen. It's always something else. There's always a network issue, an application issue, an update issue. So it's always fun to hear indeed like Citrix is slow or Citrix is not working. And it's mainly because Citrix is the first logo that users see, and that's their whole experience. But yeah, it's like 99% of the time it's not Citrix that is the issue.
That's exactly it. You know, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's because it's the first logo that they interacted with. The last thing that they touch before something breaks or something doesn't work is the thing that gets blamed. And you're 100% right, Chris. That's exactly what happens. And you know, the Citrix team, you know, and Chris, you're that Citrix team, right? You do this troubleshooting, you help people with this. You're left with zero context as to what's going on. And you have to go in and go through, you know, sort of that typical sequence of disqualifying potential issues, only to discover, well, it's not even in the Citrix environment anyways. What in the world?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. And often, and I think like, I know we're going to go through some examples, but just quickly what I want to say is like, for the people listening and that are troubleshooting those Citrix things, I think like tools, performance monitoring tools like Goliath are like so important. I come to customers sometimes and they say, yeah, everything is slow. And then they sign on to a server and they open Task Manager. I mean, like, you want to see like, okay, but what's happening over my whole farm and which servers are slow and how was it an hour ago and that kind of stuff. And you're not getting that from Task Manager. So that's just the last thing I want to say. And then we go to the demo and your example.
No, sure. No, for sure. And you know, and so what we're gonna do today, just to sort of lay out the expectations for the demo, is we're gonna talk about some, you know, the vague ticket, right? The Citrix is slow ticket that comes in. We're gonna look at some scenarios where the root cause is actually nothing to do with Citrix at all. So I'm gonna show you how easy it is to discover that within Goliath. And then what Chris is going to do is he's actually going to close the troubleshooting loop on that. So he's going to say, okay, great, we've got this information. We've isolated where the root cause is. What do we do with that now? How do we actually troubleshoot the issue? So we want to take it beyond just what Goliath helps you with. And we want to, we want to provide some tangible information for you to walk away with that maybe potentially go troubleshoot some of the issues that you're currently dealing with in your own environment. Just as an aside, we do have a monthly masterclass if you haven't participated yet. where we dig into much deeper into technical issues that customers are having. And it's all scenarios that are based on what customers share with us, what they're dealing with in real time, versus sort of what we're going to cover today, which are some common generic scenarios, which kind of cover the gambit of what a lot of you deal with. But we'll make sure that you have a link to that masterclass as well if you want to dig a little bit deeper. All right, so the first scenario we're going to look at, again, the ticket came in. You get this all the time. Citrix is slow. Now you have to figure out what in the world's going on. First of all, at this point, it's already passed through, level 1, maybe level 2 support because it had Citrix in the name. So they just bypassed any troubleshooting activities altogether, and they just sent it right to you all in the Citrix team. So it bypassed potential individuals who could have solved the issue before it got there. But it's vague. Citrix is slow. So now you go in. And in this example, so this is the one example that I don't have a great example because we actually have this is a live demo environment. This is a live environment. And so it's actually running pretty well. So we don't have any great examples for a broken logon process, but you see it a lot. You get a, user can't log on or the logon is taking too long. So you log on to the user, maybe Kiri comes in and says, Citrix is slow. I don't know what the issue is. So you just go into their session and figure out, they didn't give me any information. Let's figure out what's going on. And we're going to pretend in this case right here that we see this 18-second logon, that it's actually, 90 seconds. And this is going to be highlighted in red because it's going to be above the 30-second threshold, where most people try to keep their SLAs, 3010 SLAs for logons. So we can see here that we've got, first of all, we can see exactly all of the information for the user, their device name, how they accessed it, what version of workspace that they're leveraging, the hypervisor host, and then you can see their connection path as well, all the way from the machine, the NetScaler, delivery controller, all the way to the hypervisor. But we know, again, because we're pretending that this was highlighted in red, we know that this user is having a logon issue. So it wasn't that Citrix was necessarily slow. They didn't know how to articulate what was happening, but they are having a logon issue. So we can see an overview of exactly what's happened within the logon. Now, this doesn't give us enough information just yet to figure out what's going on. So we're going to take it a step further, and we're going to click on our logon drill down tab. And here we can see every stage of the logon process broken down, including the substages. So substages in authentication, group policy, etc. So if we've got substages, every stage is broken down, and it's graphically represented here with exactly how long each stage took as part of the logon process. So for our discussion today, we're going to say that there was an issue with group policy, because that's oftentimes when we have logon issues, when you have logon issues, it falls somewhere in group policy that something gets hung up. That's usually the issue. So if that were an issue in this particular example, you would see a bar here that is extended, for however many seconds it took, or this session got hung up trying to log on. So it would have been very easy for you to see, okay, group policy is the issue. Let me drill down into it and see exactly which policy is the issue. And now I know where I need to go look. I've isolated root cause. So now, Chris, we've got this information. We know the user is complaining that Citrix is slow, but we've discovered it's not Citrix. We knew that probably going into it, but it's not actually Citrix. It's part of their logon process, and we've isolated the root cause to being a specific group policy. So what do we do now?
Yeah, so one thing that's really nice with Goliath is it shows you then which policy is slow. So that already gives you a lot of hints. I'm just going to tell you some things I have seen in the field to watch out for. I've been at a customer, and they had a policy to configure the site to SON list. That's something you always do. You always want some stuff in the intranet SON. If you use Office 365 with single sign-on, Microsoft says you have to configure site to SON to the SSO of Azure and stuff. And actually, if you configure that policy wrong, for example, you enter a number that's not allowed, or you enter a weird wildcard character or whatever, it can actually hang on that, and it can wait up to 20 seconds. So I was at a customer, we did a drill down on a login on the GPO, and we saw, hey, the site to SON GPO is always taking 22 seconds for everyone, every day, for like months. And we checked it out, and there was indeed like a weird character in the wildcard situation. We corrected it, and bam, the policy ran within less than a second. So within within like half an hour work, we had knocked off 20 seconds of everyone that was working there, every login they did every day. So that is something you can see when it's come to GPO. Another big GPO, slow GPO, is probably like printing. You can check out, sometimes you can connect printers faster with PowerShell, like do a kind of quick connect with the printer that is faster than the default GPO options for printers. And what also some good things to check out is if you copy over, for example, some files with GPOs, you have a script that copies some files or sets some registries. Check out if you have, for example, like FS logics or whatever, that your profile is persistent. Check if you need that to copy that every time. Do you need to reset those settings or that data every time, or can it just be copied like one time? A good trick with that is sometimes you copy stuff and then the FS Logics profile gets corrupted. Sometimes that just happens, and you reset the profile. And how does group policy now know to copy those stuff again? That is easy. What you can do is, what I would say is like make a PowerShell script or a Visual Basic script that just check if the folder is there. If not, copy that information over that you need. It can be like Java settings, Oracle settings, like a TNS name, that kind of stuff that you need to copy. And set like a file or check in the profile if it's there or not. Then if you delete the FS Logic profile, it's not there again, so it will recopy that. Those are things I've seen happen with GPOs that make the login process really long.
Awesome. That's great information. And it's good that you're not just sharing, some of your experience, but just some of the common things that probably a lot of people on this session have experienced and maybe didn't know right away how to go in and fix. But again, it comes down to not being a challenge fixing the issue. The challenge is finding the issue quickly. And that's what we get to. And Chris, you actually brought up a really good point on, you shave 20 seconds off the logon process for every single person in the organization. Even if you're not experiencing a specific, logon issue, if your organization's got, running, maybe you've got a 45-second logon SLA and, you're happy living there, it's fine, everybody's good. You shave that down, you've got the ability to go in to see the breakdown of what's happening. If you can knock down, 10, 15 seconds off of the logon across every person across that organization, that's productivity. When you look at like a healthcare organization, and let's look at, doctors or nurses who are moving from room to room, and they're logging into, a device in one room, and then they leave that patient, they go to another room and they're logging in, and they might be logging in and out, 50, 100 times a day. That 20 seconds times 50 to 100 times a day, that's patient time. That's time with actual patients. So Chris, you bring a good point on just being able to optimize the logon process by being able to just see exactly where each stage of the logon is taking time.
Yeah, I fully agree. I would, even if your logon is fine and you're just starting out with performance monitoring, make sure to analyze your complete logon, because you might find stuff like the printer stuff and that kind of stuff, and GPO is not working okay. It can really bring down your signing time.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to our next Citrix issue. So you received another ticket. It's another vague one. Citrix is slow. You don't know what the deal is, but Martin is complaining that he can't, everything is responding slowly. So you've got to go in to Goliath. You find Martin's session. You can see right here, it's already pinged. Martin is having some ICA latency issues right here because it pops up here. So we click into Martin's session. Now, just as an aside, so we're gonna pause this for a second. You don't always have a Chris Tweest on the line to be able to help you resolve issues. So what happens when you need a little additional support on how to resolve some of these issues? This is just a little bit of a sneak peek. In the next 30 or so days, you're gonna see some more official announcements from us, but this is Kip. Kip is our AI troubleshooting assistant. So, let's say you've got an issue where you've got a user experiencing high ICA round trip time, but their connection speed is good. Well, what does that mean? What do we do with that? So you could enter that scenario into the AI troubleshooting assistant. And this is based on ChatGPT 4. So it basically turns this into a conversational troubleshooting help. And then you can take this and say, okay, these are the potential issues that might be causing this. Well, what do I actually do with that? Great that you tell me what it is, but how do I resolve it? What is the next step after that? So you can type that into there as well, and then you'll get some instructions on ways to resolve some of these issues. So this is just a little bit of an aside, not necessarily tied to this specific scenario, but I just wanted to showcase this with you all, because this is coming in the next 30 or so days. We'll be ready to go, but this is an actual production POC that I'm showing you right here. It just doesn't have any of the integrations yet. That'll come in our next release in the next month or so. So now back to the scenario. Okay, Martin was complaining Citrix is slow. He didn't give you any information, Chris. So you've gone into Goliath, You've opened up his session. You do know that there's definitely a spike in his round trip time because it showed you that in the dashboard. And at first glance, you can say, okay, yeah, I can definitely see that there's a spike in round trip time. I also see there's a network latency issue. So immediately I suspect that this is network latency that is the issue here. But I don't know for sure yet. I can also see some of the CPU resources are a little bit high. They're not, they spike a little bit, but they come back down. They're actually doing all right at the time that the massive spike in latency is. And I can see the connection speed is starting to go down. I don't know yet if it's too low or not. So now we're going to drill in and see exactly what's happening. Well, I can see with my thresholds here that the round trip time and the network latency are both above the critical threshold for the better part of the session, and then spike really, really high. So again, I'm suspecting maybe it's connection speed, but I look over here and actually the connection speed, while it hasn't been humming along the entire time, never really dipped below critical. It tipped at it, there towards the end, but it doesn't explain all of the issues here. So now I know that we've got network latency somewhat mirroring the ICA round trip time, and connection speed, might be a factor, but it's probably not the issue. So I suspect it's a network issue. Now, the networking team is a different team. Chris, what do we do with this information now? Because I don't have any control over that. Who do I work with? How do I resolve this network issue?
Yeah, so first off, I want to say it's impressive, the ChatGPT AI. It looks really good. It's also the first time I'm now seeing the demo you told me, and it looks really good. I just hope that I just hope, and I hope everyone on the call that is a troubleshooter. That our job is safe for the next couple of years until this will take over. But yeah, so. One of just the good things between communicating within teams, like you're the Citrix guy, you need to communicate to the networks guy, is just already having this data, being able to share this data with the network people can easily show them, like, look, there was a spike, there was this, we had connect and not bandwidth, because you have to imagine we get the ticket. Citrix is slow. They get the ticket. The network is the issue. Fix it. Usually. It's always, if you talk to network engineers, they always say, yeah, everyone just blames network. And I do it too, because between you and me, Gary, it's always the network. It's always their fault. But being able as a Citrix person to share this information with the network people is just already so good to show it. And yeah, like for example, you just showed the CPU was high too. Maybe that's an issue. Yeah, there is enough bandwidth, but how is the latency on that for that person? On the bandwidth, are there connections and are there problems at the ISP? Are there more people? Is there a high overcommit? All that kind of stuff. But yeah, we can figure that out together with the network team, and just having this data. And for example, just having a time code for network people to look at in the firewall is golden. It's like so much better than just telling them, guys, it is the network, fix it. But sending them like, no, it was at 16:04. Please look in the firewall logs if you can see something, or switch logs. That's helping them troubleshoot a lot.
Awesome. And you know, you're right, Chris. We do play hot potato, right? So the networking team thinks that, you know, they're always getting blamed and it's fake, but to be fair, that's after it already got blamed on the Citrix team. So it's definitely passing the buck. But this time, you know, you have actual data to be able to go to the networking team with and say, look, I know that it may look like there's enough bandwidth allocated to the Citrix environment, but this particular user is having an issue and it's time-stamped and you can see the actual data of when it's happening. So, you know, it's not just going to them to, you know, Chris, to your point, with some vague, you know, you're adding to the vague complaint. You're going to them with data and exactly when and where to go look at it.
Yeah,
so I know
exactly.
I know we're getting a little tight on time, so we're going to kind of combine the last two scenarios. So we get another user that complains, Kiri complains and says that his session is running slow. He doesn't know what's going on. So it doesn't give you any more information. So again, you've got this vague complaint. You just got to go open up his session, figure out what's going on. Log on looks good, so he's not having any issues there. You definitely see that there's a lot of instability in the connection, but you immediately notice that the CPU is just pinging the entire time. So we're going to drill in real quick and see what the impact has been on the ICA round trip time. Oh, well, look at this. It's actually not too bad, right? So the Citrix delivery is actually pretty good in this scenario. So what's going on? Why is there no spike there? What is this user complaining about? We look at the connection speed and we say, okay, while it's unstable, it's still actually not terrible. You know, it's within the, you know, a few times it goes into cautionary zone, but for what this user should be doing, that's not, you know, a particular bad thing. So let's go back to our summary and see, okay, well, the CPU is just pinging the entire time. So at this point, it's pretty clear to see that we've got a resource issue. It's not a network issue. It's not a Citrix issue. It's not a connection issue. It's a resources issue. So Chris, what do we do with this information?
Yeah, so of course, one of the things we always like to see is like what is causing like the resource issue. Are there just like too many people on a server? Is the server just too busy? What are the running processes on that server? That is just all, like the real deep dive. But what I also want to give you guys is just some knowledge of what I've seen in the field, and that is that sometimes if we talk about resources, keep in mind that like Windows updates and new versions of Windows are always getting heavier, and the same is for your applications. Like Microsoft Word from 3 years ago uses less CPU than Microsoft Word today. So one of the things we are encountering often is like, we go to a customer, oh, it's the whole environment is slow. People are complaining, how is it possible? We bought these servers 2 years ago, and then we figured out that this was enough performance, and now everything is slow. And so what they usually do is like 2 years ago, they did on the back of a paper of a note, like, oh, we have so many users and we think we're going to fit so many on a server, and we buy these servers. And what you then often see is like, well, maybe at first it runs okay, but then the Windows updates are coming in. They may be switching from Windows 2016 to 2019 or 2019 to 2022 Windows versions, and each version is heavier and heavier. Colleagues of mine have a research website called Go EUC, and they actually test each version of Windows, and they scientifically prove that each new version of Windows can handle less and less users. And even updates of Windows 10, like just for going from Windows 10 H1 to H2 or Windows 11, same story. So if you're monitoring your environment good, you should also like see those CPU usage maybe go higher after each update. Keep in mind, buying hardware and thinking, okay, it's scaled today, it's okay for the next 3 years, does not mean that it's actually scaled for the next 3 years. So having tools like Goliath and performance monitoring, or Goliath is of course performance monitoring, but having performance monitoring, checking your environment out, check your environment out after each update, Office 365 update, Windows updates, everything. And yeah, sometimes that means, and this is a little bit weird, I noticed that sometimes we have a little bit of trouble with this. Sometimes it means just buy an extra server. And I'm noticing that sometimes some companies are like, yeah, but we invested in servers 2 years ago, and these are like for the next 5 years, that should be the servers. Yeah, well, it's not enough. So the end conclusion can literally be just buy a new server extra. And if you don't have that data, like I said at the start, if you are the guy that's signing into each Citrix server, opening performance monitoring, just the system integrated task manager, and trying to figure that out, that's really difficult. But having Goliath and go into a CPU diagram of a host and being able to see that data over weeks, months, then you have something that you can also go to management and explain to them why you need the money for an extra server, because you have the data.
Exactly. And objective data is uber important, and is something we hear a lot when we talk to customers, is that they need more objective data because they don't have it. It's hearsay, it's hunches, it's subjective. But I want to touch back on something that you mentioned earlier, because you said, Chris, that you can drill down more. There could be more factors. So, in this particular example, maybe we assume that this was a power user, maybe an engineer or a doctor, somebody using, high graphically intensive programs. And to your point, maybe it worked last week, but there was an update to the application, and it allows them to, to stream more, higher definition content or longer video, and so therefore the resource requirement is higher.
A really easy example is, for example, PowerPoint. PowerPoint these days comes with an animation suite. You can download fully automated T-Rexes into your presentation, and those require way more CPU, especially if you're not a GPU accelerated Citrix environment, than that PowerPoint did 3 years ago. It's that easy.
Exactly. Now, what if the scenario was a little different? Same scenario. We'll use the same session for an example, but we know this is not a power user, right? This isn't somebody that has to use any applications that have any sort of graphically, intensive requirements. We can drill deeper into the user session. So we already know that, the round trip time is not too bad. Connection speed's not awful. It's definitely not awful for someone that's not a power user. It's definitely within the realm of stable connection. But we can see here with the frames per second and the fact that we see thin wire used here, that they are consuming video. So now we've got a situation where you've got a hunch that says, I think the environment's actually not too bad. I think the user's doing something. I think the user has something going on. They're either streaming video or they're sharing a network with family. What are some of the things now that you can drill deeper into user behavior? Chris, what are some of the things that you can go back to that user and help troubleshoot?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, what we often see are things like streaming internet radio on the workspace. watching YouTube videos. I've also, one of the things that I've noticed is some companies offer company cars, and then you get an email like, oh, your company car lease is almost over, and you can look for your new company car. I don't know if you've ever been on a car configurator website, like for Volkswagen or whatever, but those things are graphically intense. It's insane. Those can slow down a Citrix environment in seconds. They because they want like high resolution car 3D models show you, and that kind of stuff. And it's really then about talking with the end user. What are you doing at the moment? Or maybe you have a log that can show you which websites they are visiting, if you keep track of that on a switch or whatever, and that will allow you to look at what is the user behavior, because of course it's not handy to stream YouTube videos within a Citrix session if you don't have like any offloading or GPU acceleration. And especially these days, most people are not working on a thin client anymore, but most people are working on a laptop, which is probably powerful enough to run that video or to run the internet radio. The same is even with thin clients these days. Like good thin clients these days have good processors and stuff, and can maybe run that stuff without the Citrix session. And the last thing, I think, like, it's not the case with this user at the moment, but a case we also see a lot is when users are saying like everything is slow, and we see that the latency is super high and the bandwidth is super low. And that is that users are working a lot from home these days. And then we see a lot like children being at home sometimes and watching streaming Netflix and all that kind of stuff. And that impacts the end user session. They might think everything is slow. Your environment, CPU is low, RAM is low, everything is good, but their session is slow. And that is really like how much bandwidth is available from their side. Or we've ever seen like they're still connected to the Wi-Fi of the neighbors, or the microwave turns on, or they have made a home office in the top attic, and they don't have like a Wi-Fi repeater or whatever. Those are things that are happening a lot too, and it's also nice. It's a double-edged sword, because it's kind of then you're gonna lay the hot potato at the end user, but you can back it up by data, so you can say like, well, you're doing a ticket, Citrix is slow. Well, it's actually our Citrix is fine. It's probably your network that's slow, and go from there.
But the important thing is that you have data, right, to back it up. And you had a hunch. Probably a lot of you have hunches that this happens a lot, but you don't have the data to back it up. Now you have the data, not only to back it up and prove your hunch, but also to go in and resolve it, to permanently resolve it. We had a quick example of a user who leveraged Goliath to figure out that there was a connection issue with a particular user at their house. He sent them an Ethernet cable. He said their Wi-Fi router just wasn't enough. It wasn't letting enough bandwidth through. So he sent the user an Ethernet cable, how to connect directly, and the issues resolved immediately. So I mean, see, even as simple as that. But again, you've got to have the data to be able to prove that hunch and to be able to back it up to permanently resolve it. And if you weren't counting, in any of these scenarios, none of them took more than 3 clicks to get to a root cause. And that's the beauty of having it all correlated together. Again, this is not just the Citrix environment. This looks at the entire delivery infrastructure all the way to the end user's behavior, and it correlates everything together. And within just a few clicks, you're getting to root cause. And so when we see that 90% of the time is spent finding the issue, 10% of the time is fixing it, well, that 90% now just gets drastically reduced. The issues are generally fairly quick to fix. You've saved a ton of time on MTTR. So that ends our demo. We can go ahead and start wrapping up. I know we're getting tight on time. So Manchu, do you want to jump back in and talk a little bit about the...
Yes, absolutely. So by the way, thank you so much, Chris and Kerry. That was really Really great discussions and great demo of your product. So I really enjoyed listening to it. So on that note, whatever, Kerry presented and Chris talked about, all the solutions from Goliath for performance monitoring is Citrix Ready validated. That means the product is thoroughly integrated with Citrix different versions and different platforms. Be it Citrix DAS or VDI, we have integrated and tested how it behaves with different versions and different platforms. So it absolutely works as they explained now. So on that note, we have given Goliath Technologies as a Citrix Ready approved product, one thing, and second thing, they are one of the key front runners, security partner under the monitoring and performance ecosystem. So if you ever want to buy any performance monitoring solution, so you know whom to reach out to.
Awesome. And Manju, Citrix has been a great partner to us as well, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate being able to have the opportunity to go in and be part of the Citrix defense team.
Great, yeah,
so
absolutely.
Just a few items to wrap up. I mentioned a masterclass earlier. If you want to dig deeper into specific customer scenarios, we do that every month. This next month, we're focused on log-on issues, and we've got Alexander Ervik Johnson is going to be joining us for that. If you're interested in a free pre-OC or trial, we can set you up with that. We have personalized demos as well, where we can really hone into your specific use cases. And then we have free consulting licenses and NFRs, and you can reach out to techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com. You can visit our website, or you can visit the Citrix Ready website as well, all of which you can find our information.
Great. Curry, I have a few interesting questions which we really have to take before we wind off. So let's take at least a few of them. One, just for everyone's awareness again, we will share the slide deck and the recording as well in a day or two. So please look forward for an email from us. Now, there's an interesting question. How long the data is retained once we capture the logs and once we monitor the infrastructure?
Yeah, that's, you know what, we get that question a lot. And the short answer is it's unlimited. We leverage SQL Server for data retention, so your limitations are simply your own limitations. So, most of our customers retain data for anywhere between 30 and 90 days, but it's effectively unlimited if you've got the space for it. So no limitations on retaining data, historical data, which, as if you'll remember back in the customer example that I shared you earlier with the large health system that was having the networking issue, it was the fact that they had the ability to go back and look at historical data that they were able to see exactly where the issue started. So,
great. On your previous slide, Kerry, you mentioned about masterclass. How do one sign up for the masterclass?
Sure, we will get everybody a link to that masterclass as part of a follow-up, so that if you're interested, you can go ahead and register. So we'll make sure that we get you a link to that.
Right. There's another interesting question. So we are getting ready to upgrade to Windows 11 machines from Windows 10. Can Goliath help us to track end user experience during the upgradation and deployment?
That is an excellent question. We actually get a lot of this, with sort of deployment projects. I'm going to pull up a screenshot real quick to show you one of the best ways that we can help with that. We've got a unique end user experience scorecard, and so essentially the way that our customers leverage this is when they're getting ready to deploy some new piece of technology. In this case, that looks like they're upgrading to Windows 11. What they would do is they would run this scorecard prior to implementation, so that they would get effectively a baseline of what the end user experience is across the organization. If you're not familiar with the scorecard, by the way, this is an objective piece of data that measures the actual end user experience and then benchmarks it against industry best practices and then provides a score. So you can see, at the top here, you can see the overall organizational score, how the organization as a whole is doing, and then you can see the breakdown of the individual users. You can have it filtered out by organizational unit or department, or however you've got your organization set up, and then you can see what the individual user experience is. So for the purpose of this particular question, you establish a baseline by running this report before deploying, and then after you deploy the new technology, you run the report again and see what's actually happening. Because what happens is you deploy new technology, new devices, new applications, whatever the case might be, users, they get grumpy. They don't like change. And so they're immediately going to start finding things wrong with whatever that is. Chris alluded to it earlier too, when he said that, they blame whatever the last thing they interacted with. Well, this takes all the emotion out of it, all the subjectivity out of it, and it lets you as an IT team objectively measure what the actual end user experience is. And then you can report that up to management and say, look, I know users are complaining that, the Windows 11 is not working, but it actually, everything is flowing just fine. And actually their user experience improved after we deployed the Windows 11 machine. So that's one way that our customers leverage these scorecards when they have big project-based implementations.
Great. There are a few questions which I'm going to answer on the chat on the Q&A panel directly. There are questions which we need your answer, Kerry. I'm going to take one last question before we wind off. We are already running over the time. The last question is Goliath compatible with older version of Citrix and Windows, for example, XenApp 6.5 and Windows 2008?
Absolutely. Yes, it is.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Now, what Goliath will help you with is it will help you understand the impact of the older versions on your end user's experience. So we do run into that with some of our customers where they're having some end user experience issues. They actually leverage this scorecard that I just showed you to see what the end user experience is. And they found that a lot of the users were using end of life receiver versions, and that that they needed to update the client for their users, and that that improves user experience. There's a whole myriad of there's a whole other conversation for another day as to what the implications of that are. But I say that to say, if you're running, we are compatible, yes, and we're also going to help show you what the impact of that is on your user's experience.
Great. On a similar note, there's a question for compatibility with Citrix DaaS, which is Citrix Cloud. The answer is yes. And I can endorse Goliath is one of the only partners who have a partnership with Google for the Chrome OS monitoring and performance solution. So if you're having Chrome OS deployments, please feel free to ask us. We can show you a live demo of how it is easy to monitor Chrome OS deployments as well.
Excellent. Yep, absolutely. We're the only ones that can pull the device telemetry from Chrome OS devices and then correlate it with the end user experience with the rest of the IT delivery infrastructure. So absolutely, that's something that is on your radar. You're considering piloting it, let us know, and we'd be happy to help you with that rollout and measure end user experience across that deployment as well.
Great. So how about with VMware Horizon? I know it's out of the question, but there's a question around that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have expected that to come up on a Citrix webinar, but yes, the same thing that we do with Citrix and monitoring and troubleshooting Citrix end user experience, we do the same thing for Horizon as well.
Great. On that note, we already ran over the time. Kerry and Chris, thank you so much for coming forward and presenting the demo of Goliath performance monitoring solution for customers. It's really good one. I personally enjoyed seeing every bit of it. Do you have any final thoughts?
Manju, we appreciate your partnership. Thank you for hosting us and allowing us to be part of it. And Chris, thank you as well. I always love partnering with you. I love the dialogue that we get to have. So I appreciate you coming in and helping to close that troubleshooting loop.
Great. And for
Yeah,
all
you're
attendees,
very welcome. Thanks also to everyone that listened. Was a fun webinar.
thank you, Chris. I mean, it was really good to have you here on our webinar. And we look forward to do more webinar with you in the future. And for all the attendees, thank you. For all the attendees, thank you again for being so patient and listening to us. And this concludes our webinar, and we will connect you again in our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.